passion is a powerful desire or a strong enthusiasm or zeal for something or someone. Moses had a passion for justice. So in every situation that affected him, he tried to establish justice. He protected the weak, rescued the oppressed, and defended the defenseless. That is the kind of material that God is looking for, because establishing truth and justice is a common factor in all of God's work. Only a man with a passion for justice would want to do something about the unjust treatment about the Israelite slaves in Egypt. Only a person who honored God's ways could talk to the Lord as a man talks to his friend. Only a person who submitted to the authority of God could speak with the authority of God and see the miraculous. Moses did all these things, and that tells us that God saw in Moses material that he could use. We can learn from this passage that growing in truth and justice positions us for selection in the purposes of God, because that is the material that God is looking for. So let's continue with the story. Now Moses has run away from Egypt and arrives at Midian, where he sits down by the well. Let's read Exodus chapter 2, 16 to 22. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. The shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and saved them and watered their flock. When they came home to their father Reuel, he said, "How is it that you have come home so soon today?" They said, "An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and even drew water for us and watered the flock." He said to his daughters, "Then where is he? Why have you left the man? Call him that he may eat bread." And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah. She gave birth to a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, "I have been a sojourner in a foreign land." In the past 2 passages, we see that Moses is a man of courage. Firstly, we see him rescue the Israelite from the hand of the Egyptian. He came to the aid of a defenseless man. Although he acted rashly, we must not overlook his sense of justice in helping the oppressed. When Moses was at the well in Midian, the daughters of Jethro, who was also called Reuel, came to water their father's flock. They were apparently shepherding their father's sheep. But a group of shepherds who wanted to water their own flocks came and drove them away. Once again, Moses rises up to protect the weak. A deep sense of justice was built into him that made him a protector of the weak wherever he went. It is the very nature of God to look after the weak and protect those who are vulnerable. In the Bible, God clearly states that this is a standard that he expects from his people. Take a look at Zechariah chapter 7, verses 9 and 10. He says, "Do not oppress the widow, the fatherless, the sojourner, or the poor, and let none of you devise evil against another in your heart." In this passage, God identifies some of the defenseless people in society. The widow is defenseless because she's lost her husband. She has no one to protect her. The fatherless is also translated as orphan in some of the versions of the Bible, that is, one without parents to look after him. The sojourner is a stranger or a temporary inhabitant of the land. Because he's in a foreign land, he's without family, friends, or security. He is therefore vulnerable. And the poor are easily victimized for obvious reasons. They have little or no money. But for us, the list doesn't end there. As we look around us, we see people who are sick, elderly, dependent. We see infants. We see single mothers, many of whom struggle on a daily basis, and those who are not yet independent. All these, in varying degrees, are defenseless simply because of where they are at in life. The command of the Lord is clear. Do not oppress them. Show kindness and mercy towards them. Stand up for them like Moses stood up to protect the weak and the vulnerable. Human life is a gift from God, and God places utmost value upon it. Moses demonstrated courage and took risks to rescue the weak and defend the oppressed. 2 things that can quench our passion for justice are, firstly, fear. Very often, fear can make people take the side of the oppressor, but it's only faith in God that can empower us to protect the weak. There is a cost involved in standing for truth and justice, and only a few are willing to walk that path. That is why Jesus said, many are called, but few are chosen. Because the invitation is given to many, but the selection is given only to those who are willing to stand for truth. And that is normally only just a few. The second thing that can quench our passion for justice is indifference. When Moses was at the well in Midian, he saw the injustice that was being done to the 7 daughters of Jethro. He could have been a spectator and said, "This is none of my business." But he chose to be an intervener. He promptly stepped in and defended them. So in both situations, the Israelite whom he saved and the daughters of Jethro whom he rescued, Moses emerges as an intervener and not a spectator. It takes faith to be an intervener. Intervention must not be confused with interference. Interference has a selfish motive attached to it, whereas intervention has a noble intention of bringing justice in a situation that is going wrong. Intervention seemed to be the way of life for Moses. He proved to be a lover of justice and truth in small situations, so God used him in big situations, like leading the entire nation of Israel out of slavery into freedom. Then God personally handed him the law on Mount Sinai, thereby endorsing Moses before all people as a man who loved truth and justice. He was therefore the right person to bring God's law into the nation of Israel. We see Moses growing into a kind of person whom God could trust. Too often I've asked myself the question, do I trust God in this situation? But now I realize that a more appropriate question would be, does God trust me in this situation? Because when we love justice and truth, we grow into a character that God can rely on and build upon. In this passage, we see in Moses the kind of material that God can use, and we are challenged to ask ourselves, how far away am I from becoming usable material in the hands of God? Am I an instrument of His mercy? Am I a lover of truth? And do I have a passion for justice?